ஹாய் ஹலோ guys, how are you all? நீங்கள் நியூஸில் பார்த்தா உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்சிருக்கும். there has been a ceasefire understanding between India and Pakistan. இன்றைக்கி 5 மணிலேருந்து ceasefire has been effective immediately. இப்போ அதோட நியூஸ் ப்ரீஃபிங் ஆஸ் வெல் அஸ் எப்படி இன்டர்நெட்டில் அதை பார்க்கப்படுது அப்படிங்கிற எல்லாத்தையும் நம்ம சேர்த்து வச்சு ஒன்றா பார்க்க போகிறோம். வாங்க, let's get into the show.
Joining me right now is Mr. Tilak Devashar. He is member of the National Security Advisory Board. Mr. Devashar, ceasefire first declared by Donald Trump, subsequently confirmed by the Pakistani and then the Indian side. What is your first reaction, sir?
Surprised. I mean, I don't think anybody was expecting this. There's normally obviously back channels were very much in play, which very few people knew about it. And the fact that it was announced by the US president, that itself was also surprising. And then, of course, the Indian Foreign Secretary has just confirmed it, I think about 10 minutes ago. But why the ceasefire took place today is something I think we don't know enough details and, the reasoning why it happened. But obviously, the US Secretary of State was in touch. He had spoken to the Pak Army Chief. He spoke to our EAM. And so behind the scenes, there were activities that were happening. I think it came about as a result of that.
India's position was always that this is not escalatory, that we are only targeting terrorists in Pakistan and we are not at war with the Pakistani state. It was Pakistan that was retaliating and taking it a notch higher. Do you think the Americans put pressure on them to stand down? Because this is not a country that can afford war, A, and B, India was only responding to a terrorist attack. Do you think the Americans built that pressure on the Pakistani side?
I think so. I think because after this terror attack in Pahalgam, there was worldwide condemnation of the terror attack. And there was a lot of support for India, what India had done, and people knew that India will react. And our response, even which was made out, was measured and aimed only at the terror infrastructure, especially in Muridke and Bahawalpur. So everybody realized that it is a very specific terror-oriented strikes that India has done. But you're right, the Pakistani escalation strike from day one, they started targeting civilian areas as well as military targets, to which then India responded. So, the escalation ladder had gone up a couple of rungs, especially after the missile attacks by Pakistan, including one that was targeting Delhi, which was detected and diffused on Sirsa. There was also an attack on the Harmandir Sahib in Amritsar. So it was obvious that Pakistan was escalating, and the fact that they were calling a meeting of the National Command Authority, which looks after their nuclear assets, announced by the Prime Minister. So Pakistan was signaling. In fact, I think it was personally a cry of desperation, wanting the US or China or Saudi Arabia or somebody to come in, step in, and help them retrieve the situation, because I don't think so they have the wherewithal to fight for very long. They suffered enough losses, so they must be looking for a bailout. And the first opportunity that they got, that's why it was the Pakistani DGMO who called up this morning and asked for a ceasefire, which then must have led to further conversations in which the ceasefire was agreed.
In the press briefing, the Indian side said yesterday that we've offered them an off-ramp and India has offered multiple opportunities for Pakistan to de-escalate. Mr. Devashar, what happens next? We're talking about a ceasefire in place, but this is Pakistan and it has a record of not respecting ceasefires. So what are the next steps that we should expect? The Foreign Secretary making clear that the DGMOs will speak again on the 12th of May, which is Monday. So what should we expect in the intervening period?
You see, I think this is going to allow Pakistan time to regroup, count its losses, see where the deficiencies are, and try. And I am not convinced. I don't trust Pakistan. You can never be sure that they will keep their word. They will find some excuse to break the ceasefire at a time and place of their choosing where they feel that they have an advantage. They will certainly do that, at least try and do that. So we can't trust them. I think we need to verify each and every step or each and every word or sentence that they speak when the actual nitty-gritty of the ceasefire is worked out on the 12th. That's on the coming Monday, when the DGMOs meet again. So I won't trust Pakistan at all, that they could break the ceasefire when they feel they are in an advantageous position. Today they are not. They have received a hit, especially on their air assets and the airfields. They will try and see how best they can retrieve the situation. And when they feel strong enough, you can be rest assured they'll be back.
So what does it mean for India's military posture? Will we remain in this heightened state of readiness, or are we going to, in terms of logistics, in terms of the kind of deployments that we've seen, are we going to maintain that posture for the foreseeable future?
I don't think so that we really went into a war-like posture. Leave was not cancelled. You don't find troop movement towards the borders. It was more using drones and air assets. So I think that will continue, and that can be mobilized very quickly also. But the really important thing is what changed in the Indian doctrine, that we have announced that any act of terror would be treated as an act of war. Now that is a very important and a very significant statement that we have made, and I think Pakistan needs to take note of that, because any act of terror, as soon as you declare it as an act of war, it changes the equation, totally. So it's an additional to our war-fighting doctrine. You recall that after Balakot, the Foreign Secretary had said that this was a preemptive strike, that we had got information that there was a concentration of terrorists who were going to attack India, so this was a preemptive attack. So now we have a doctrine of preemption. We also have a doctrine of any act of terror will be seen as an act of war. So I think even if there is a ceasefire, Pakistan will have to be extremely careful in future that it doesn't resort to its tricks again.
Right. I'll repeat for those who are just joining us. A ceasefire has been declared. The first information, announcement, interestingly, came from the US President Donald Trump on his social media platform, Truth Social, where he took credit saying that the Americans mediated a full and immediate ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Subsequently, the US Foreign Minister, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, said that they had been talking to the top leadership from both sides, between him and Vice President J.D. Vance, and they had multiple consultations over the past 48 hours and were able to achieve a ceasefire. And he also interestingly said that both sides have agreed to a ceasefire and to start talks on and I'm quoting, a broad set of issues at a neutral side. That is not something that the Indian side has referred to. We then heard from the Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar, who confirmed the decision to cease fire. And then subsequently, the Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri made a brief statement saying that the ceasefire came into effect at 5 p.m. India time, and the DGMOs will talk again on the 12th of May. Mr. Tilak Devashar, we've been looking at India's response to Pakistani provocations over the past decade, 2016, 2019, 2025, and we've seen that the stakes have gone up every time. What is the biggest takeaway for you from how India has responded to the Pahalgam terror attack?
I think it's been a very firm response, because we did not only go for the kinetic path. I think General Asim Munir and Pakistan were probably expecting that India would respond militarily. And like in the case of Uri and Balakot, there would be a skirmish and things would come back to normal. But in the meantime, the people of Pakistan would have united behind the Pakistan army. We started off with the non-kinetic measures, and the key amongst them was to hold the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. Now that is a huge long-term step that will have very serious consequences for Pakistan's agriculture and Pakistan's food security. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that it is a mixture of non-kinetic and kinetic measures that actually will impact Pakistan for the long term. Because, there is no life without water. And if water gets disrupted, and now we're coming into the early Kharif sowing. So if this combined with what the kinetic measures that we have taken is probably the way forward if Pakistan doesn't behave.
Right. We can also tell our viewers that Pakistan has opened airspace after the ceasefire announcement with India. It has opened its airspace on just a short while back. This is what the Pakistan Airports Authority has announced, and I'm quoting, Pakistan's airspace has been fully reopened for all types of flights. We've also heard from the Foreign Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, confirming what we've been telling our audience, that India and Pakistan have today worked out an understanding on the stoppage of firing and military action. India has consistently maintained a firm and uncompromising stance against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, and it will continue to do so. So this is where things stand at the moment. Confirmation coming from multiple sources now that there is a ceasefire, but that does not mean that the threat from Pakistan is over. We've been here before. We've seen situations like this before, and we've seen the terror infrastructure that continues to be rebuilt and that continues to thrive and be backed by the Pakistani state. In fact, as we told you earlier today, that the IMF has just released another tranche of loan, upwards of $2 billion to Pakistan in two parts, in a meeting yesterday where India abstained and was very critical of the position of the International Monetary Fund as its money continues to fund the terror factories of Pakistan. India abstained because voting no was not an option in that meeting, and that money is going to be cleared within hours of that. In fact, Pakistan launched its own military operation against India, complete with missiles that were fired as far away as Sirsa in Haryana, where we can tell you that debris was found. Mr. Tilak Devashar, would you say that we've established a higher level of deterrence after our response in this latest episode?
Yes. After Uri and especially after Balakot, we thought that we had established a level of deterrence that Pakistan would not repeat that. Obviously, the lessons had been forgotten. And none of this new army chief. In fact, Pulwama took place when Asim Munir was DGISI, and now Pahalgam has taken place when he is the army chief. So the deterrence had obviously broken down because of Pahalgam. I think it's going to be re-established. It'll take some time for Pakistan to really figure out the consequences and work out the doctrine of what has happened, and what India has announced, that any act of terror will be seen as an act of war. Together with the non-kinetic measures, I think it's going to establish a new normal and a new level of deterrence in Indo-Pak relations.
நான் பட்ட கண்டென்ட் உங்களுக்கு பிடிச்சிருக்கா லைக் பண்ணுங்கள். உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது சஜஷன் இருக்குது, நான் அப்புறம் இதை பற்றி பேசலாமே அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஏதாவது கண்டென்ட் உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது இருக்குது நான் சஜஸ்ட் பண்ணணும்னு நினச்சிங்கன்னா கமெண்ட் செக்ஷனில் தெரியப்படுத்துங்க. இஃப் யூ வாண்ட் டு சப்போர்ட் மீ, ஹிட் தட் சப்ஸ்கிரைப் பட்டன். திஸ் த ஒன்லி வே யூ கேன் சப்போர்ட் எனி அப்கமிங் யூடியூபர்ஸ் லைக் மீ. நான் கொஞ்சம் பேர் ரெஸ்ட் எடுக்கிறேன், கொஞ்சம் அடுத்தது என்னென்னு பிளான் பண்ணிட்டு வரேன். நான் கண்டிப்பாக நியூஸ் ரியாக்ட் இன்னைக்கு காதலுக்கு தான் கொடுக்குறாங்க நியூஸ் டிபேட்டில், அது எல்லாமே நாளைக்கு நம்ம ரியாக்ட் பண்ணுவோம். யாரும் நிம்மதியாக போய் படுத்துவங்க. சீஸ்ஃபயர் இன்னும் கரெக்டாக பாகிஸ்தான் ஹானர் பண்ணிக்கலன்னு தெரியல, நிறையா பே வருது தே ஹேவ் இட் த வயலேட்டட் சீஸ்ஃபயர்னு. ஸ்டே விஜிலண்ட் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவேன் நான். எல்லோரும் நிம்மதியாக தூங்குங்க. இன்னொரு நல்ல ஸ்டோனில் சந்திக்க நாட்டில் இருக்க. பை யூ ஆல். பீஸ் அவுட்.